My name is Daniel Mercer, and for 14 months I had been visiting the cemetery before sunrise because grief was easier when no one could see it. At 6 o'clock every morning, Riverside Cemetery belonged to silence. No reporters, no executives, no investors asking about quarterly projections, no assistants reminding me where I needed to be next. Just me and Sarah, or at least the piece of white marble that carried her name. The city still slept when I arrived. The sky was a pale gray and the grass shimmered with dew beneath my shoes. Most people knew me as the billionaire who had built one of the largest technology companies in the world. Newspapers estimated my net worth at $12 billion, but none of that mattered here, because no amount of money could buy back the woman buried beneath that stone. I sat beside her grave and loosened my tie. Sarah used to laugh whenever I did that. "You only loosen your tie when you stop pretending," she would say. Then she'd smile and hand me a cup of coffee. I could almost hear her voice. Almost. The memory hurt more than the silence. For 14 months, I had been living inside a mansion that felt more like a museum. 18 rooms, 4 servants, 2 chefs, and somehow it felt emptier than the tiny apartment Sarah and I shared when we were 24. Back then, we were broke. We had mismatched furniture, a leaking faucet, and exactly 1 frying pan. Yet somehow we had been rich, not in money, in laughter, in dreams, in each other. I closed my eyes. The morning air smelled like wet earth and fresh grass. For a moment, I imagined Sarah sitting beside me. Then reality returned. The grave remained silent, just as it always did. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Time behaved differently around grief. Then I heard footsteps, small footsteps, light, carefree. Nothing like the heavy steps adults carried into cemeteries. I assumed it was a visitor passing by, but the footsteps stopped directly behind me. A tiny voice spoke. "Are you sad?" The question was so simple that it hit harder than any speech ever could. I turned around. Standing there was a little girl holding a yellow dandelion. She couldn't have been older than 5. Her dark curls bounced around her shoulders and her enormous brown eyes studied me with complete honesty. Children didn't care about wealth, or status, or power. They only cared about truth. And at that moment, the truth was obvious. I looked sad. Behind her stood a woman in pale blue medical scrubs. She looked exhausted. The kind of exhausted that comes from working all night and worrying all day. Yet there was strength in her eyes. The kind of strength life only gives to people who survive things they never deserved. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, reaching for the little girl, but I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. She asked a fair question. The little girl continued watching me, waiting, expecting an answer. I realized most adults avoided direct questions about pain. Children didn't. "Yes," I finally said. "I am sad." She nodded seriously, as if confirming something she had already suspected. Then she pointed toward a nearby grave. "My daddy is here too." The words settled between us. Not dramatic, not complicated, just true. Something tightened in my chest. The woman stepped forward. "My name is Clara," she said softly. "And this is Lily." Lily immediately marched toward Sarah's grave, without asking permission, without hesitation. She carefully placed the dandelion against the marble stone, then stepped back proudly. "There," she said, "for your person." I stared at the flower, a single dandelion. I had received hundreds of expensive floral arrangements after Sarah died. Roses, lilies, orchids, flowers worth thousands of dollars. Yet somehow this little weed meant more than all of them combined, because it came from a child who expected nothing in return. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. Not happiness, not yet, but something. A crack in the wall grief had built around my heart. "How long?" I asked Clara. She understood immediately. "Almost 2 years," she said. "My husband was a paramedic." She paused. "There was an accident." No dramatic details, no self-pity, just facts, the kind people learn to use when pain becomes too familiar. Lily was 3. The little girl had wandered off to inspect a butterfly. "She remembers his voice." I nodded. For a moment, we simply watched Lily. Children had a remarkable ability to continue living even after tragedy. Adults called it resilience. Children simply called it being alive. "She's not afraid of this place," I said. Clara smiled, a small smile. I didn't want her to be. She looked around the cemetery. This is where we talked to him. Then she added something that stayed with me. Love shouldn't become scary just because someone dies. I stared at her. Nobody had ever said grief that way before. For 14 months, I had hidden mine, protected it, locked it away. But Clara had done the opposite. She had invited her daughter inside it, taught her how to carry it, and somehow that seemed healthier than everything I'd been doing. The sun climbed higher. Golden light filtered through the trees. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't thinking about board meetings, or stock prices, or acquisitions. I was simply standing there, talking, being human, and strangely, it felt unfamiliar. Her name was Sarah, I said. Clara looked toward the grave. She must have been very loved. I laughed softly, a real laugh, small, unexpected, painful, like a muscle I hadn't used in years. She was. Then I told Clara about Sarah, how we met, how she mocked my terrible coffee, how she believed in me before investors did, how she could walk into a room and somehow make it feel warmer. And as I talked, something remarkable happened. For the first time in 14 months, speaking about Sarah didn't feel like reopening a wound. It felt like honoring her. When I finally stopped talking, Clara glanced at her watch. We should go. School, work, life, the ordinary responsibilities that continue no matter how broken your heart feels. She reached for Lily's hand, then looked back at me. I hope your morning gets easier. That was all. No request, no expectation, no attempt to impress me. Just kindness. Simple and honest. And suddenly, I realized I didn't want them to leave. Not because I was lonely, because for the first time since Sarah died, I felt less alone. The realization startled me. Before I could overthink it, I spoke. Would you like breakfast? Clara blinked, clearly surprised. We're not much, she admitted. The words carried no shame, only honesty. We're a tired nurse and a little girl with a backpack. I looked at Lily. She was holding 3 leaves and what appeared to be half a stick. Treasure, in the eyes of a 5-year-old. Then I looked back at Clara. Neither am I anymore. For several seconds, she studied me. Not my suit, not my watch, not the expensive car waiting near the gate. Me. Finally, something softened in her expression. Lily answered before her mother could. I like pancakes. The words made Clara laugh. A genuine laugh, bright, unexpected, beautiful, and hearing it felt strangely important. I smiled. I know a place. So together we walked toward the cemetery gate. A billionaire, a widowed nurse, and a little girl carrying leaves. 3 strangers connected by loss. None of us realizing that morning would change every one of our lives forever.